Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Camera Life podcast. It's the 24th of July, and this is episode 101 of the Camera Life podcast, proudly brought to you by Lucky Straps. If you're looking for a premium leather camera strap made right here in Australia, then head to luckystraps.com and make sure you use the code GREG, that's G-R-E-G, for a 15% discount. There's no other codes, it's just Greg. You all know it. Welcome to yet another show. Yes, we had our 100th episode on Monday night. If you haven't watched that already, please make sure you do, because there is a Lucky Straps prize pack up for grabs for anyone that leaves a comment not in the live chat, but in the actual in the comment section of Monday night's episode. If you leave a comment, you go into the running for a $650 Australian Lucky Strap prize pack. So make sure you check that out. We have photography royalty with us today, but we knew him before he was famous, I promise. We're joined today by Scott Portelli, who is an international award-winning wildlife, nature, aerial, and underwater photography. Such a hog of all the accolades there, Scott. But this week, Scott was graced with the prize of the Australian Photographer of the Year. The Australian Photographer of the Year, not for any category, just that's the category, all of them, for the Australian Photographic Prize 2025. Congratulations, Scott, and welcome to the Camera Life podcast. It's really great to have you on.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Have you kind of come down off cloud nine from your recent win?
Yeah, it was a sort of bit of an emotional roller coaster. I had about 3 days before, they were asking for a whole bunch of RAW files, and I'm on the road in Outback WA, and I realized that hard drive was back home in Esperance. So I had to get a friend, break into the house, go find the hard drives, upload them to Dropbox, send it. Like literally, it was in the nick of time, like hours before, they were about to announce things that they just wanted to verify. And then after that, I was relaxed, and but it's been up and down, but exciting at the same time.
That's crazy.
A huge achievement, seriously. And there's a lot of amazing photographers, because this is not just an Australian prize, it is actually also open to international photographers. And there was an international photographer winner. We'll have a look at those images a little later on in the show. But just before we do, can you just give us the quick version of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so basically, majority of the time I'm doing wildlife underwater. I'm probably more known for my underwater work, but over the last couple of years, I've been dabbling in sort of a few different genres. So I spend a bit more time wildlife above the water, a lot of nature stuff. I'm doing a lot more aerial work. Recently, I found a bit of a passion for macro, so I'm starting to get into the macro world as well, and nice. a bit of astro as well. So I do a bit of everything, but I travel the world, running different photography workshops, taking people to see wildlife in various places, trekking with gorillas in Rwanda, swimming with whales in Tonga, Norway with the orcas, Antarctica, and so on and so forth. So when I get home and I'm able to do stuff in Australia, it's great. It's always nice to be home.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. What I find most funny, most interesting about that little intro of yours is that, you talked about Antarctica and going to Tonga and so on and so forth. It's like you've already name dropped some amazing locations. And we're going to get into that in a bit more detail. But first, let's jump to the chat, Justin, and say good morning to some people.
I'll say good morning to some people. Before I do that, I really just want to ask, because I read this somewhere. I read a little bit about you yesterday. I was doing some research. First of all, your awards page is the longest page on any website I've ever seen, ever. But secondly, is it true, and this was from a couple of years ago, I think, is it true you've been to Antarctica over 25 times?
Yeah, besides running these sort of trips, I also work on an expedition ship. So I've spent a bit of time in Antarctica, definitely in the last decade. And more recently, I've been doing sort of private yacht trips with photographers. So we take a group of 7 photographers down on a yacht for 1 month in Antarctica, and we just focus purely on photography.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
That'd
terrible.
be amazing.
Yeah. Okay. We need to hear about that later.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. Oh my gosh, the chat's going crazy. So Dennis Smith in the chat, he had his alarm set and is very excited that you are here.
Yeah.
Rodney Nicholson is here. He's got his coffee.
Yeah. Yes, please.
This is a new one. Technique FPV. What's up, dromies? Must be a FPV drone guy or girl, drone person. Philip Johnson, good morning as always.
Hey, Philip.
Got Lisa Leach in the house, says, good morning, gentlemen. I have my cuppa and I'm ready to be enlightened on all things photography.
Good to see you, Lisa. And thanks for the recommendation. Lisa's recommended another guest in the future. So thank you.
Which is awesome because we've also got Neil here as well. Morning, everyone. Team Leach are ready to go. So they're both coffeed up and ready to rumble. Elena, as always, in the house.
Hey.
Kev Morse from Margate, Tassie.
Okay, Kev.
The one and only Mike Hock photo. Good morning.
Who is that?
We're enjoying having you along, Mike Hock. It's a struggle to say your name without laughing, but we're getting there. Robert Varner from New Jersey. Good to see you. John Pickett. Good morning. And Anthony Stonehouse. Morning, gents. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I was just rocking my lucky strap at Frame Fest last weekend. Disappointed you didn't spot it. I was on the lookout. I don't know if I saw you with a camera strap. You should have come up and said hi. Did you spot me? Anyway. Digifrog, yes. Good to see you. And I think, LTK photo. I think that's it so far. But Pete Mellows, the one and only. Hey, good morning, Pete. Great to see everybody. It's going to be a good show.
It is going to be a good show. Just remember, guys, if you're new to the channel, if you're watching this for the first time, whether live with us now or in the future, make sure you give us a like. It helps with the algorithms. YouTube will send it out to more people as a result. And if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notifications of every upcoming episode of the Camera Life podcast. So, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, we are joined by Scott Portelli, who is the Australian Photographic Prize winner, Australian Photographer of the Year. Let's just let that settle in. Of all the photographers in the country, you are the Australian Photographer of the Year. I just find that absolutely mind-blowing that we've got you here on the show and we get a chance to talk to you about your experience and your journey. But speaking of your journey, we'd like to roll back the clock a little bit to your earlier days, perhaps as a child or a teenager. When was it that you discovered that photography might be something for you? When did you first pick up a camera? Tell us that story.
Yeah, look, I think what started it was travel. I was probably 18 or 19 when I first sort of traveled outside the country. I think I went to New Zealand. And I think because I started to travel, I realized that, I liked, documenting things, taking photos of things. So it sort of started there. I think my first camera was a Minolta 7XI. So back in the film days, Minolta don't exist anymore. I think the more I traveled, the more I wanted to take photos. And then being in Australia, we all live near the water, basically. Mm-hmm. So I started to get a bit of a feel for underwater photography. And I got myself a Nikonos 5 underwater camera. So I had all these early film cameras that I was using, to start, learning photography. And I think that was the first sort of, kickoff. And I didn't really take it serious. It was all sort of more of a hobby / passion for a number of years. And it probably wasn't until around, I want to say 2005-7, when digital started coming out, that I started to be a bit more, focused on, wildlife and underwater sort of stuff. And then I worked in advertising and marketing for 15 years, and not even in a creative role. But it was one of those things that was a little bit soul destroying industry. So I took that step to go full-time photographer, which wasn't that long ago, really, in the big picture of things. So in 2015, I was made redundant from the advertising job I was working at, and then I thought, well, I know how to market and advertise, so maybe I should market and advertise myself. And then basically after 2015, I started entering competitions. I was lucky enough to win a few big ones in that year, which was a bit of a kick towards, you know, a more serious career in photography.
Yeah. And so growing up, were you surrounded by, you know, creative people? Were your parents, you know, artistically minded? Were they business minded? The mentors that you had, perhaps? Tell us a little bit about some of those early influences.
Yeah. No, my parents are very relaxed. They were sort of do whatever you want type of people.
Nice.
And, you know, which is great. I always had freedom to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, like a lot of people, I was inspired, you know, by beautiful imagery, maybe didn't sort of understand what that meant for a while, until, you know, I started to get a bit more curious about things. You know, and over the years, like, you know, I've had, you know, a lot of people who inspire me, especially in the wildlife world. Like, I don't know if you've heard of people like Paul Nicklin, you know, the Brian Scarries, you know, all the people that are Nat Geo photographers, BBC photographers, BBC documentarians. And, you know, and I've been lucky enough over the years to meet a lot of these people that, you know, were my inspiration or my heroes. So it's been a great sort of journey in evolution, you know, going through this process. So yeah, my inspirations were varied, but I don't think I was, like, a lot of photographers are a bit more classically trained, and they might have a bit more art background or graphic design background, or, you know, some sort of creative background. Whereas mine was always, even when I worked in the corporate world, I was a producer, I was a project manager. So I had the, you know, the project planning mentality, the finance hat on all the time. So the photography was the creative outlet for me. And then eventually, like I said, when I took the step and went full time, I sort of combined those skill sets to sort of create my own business, you know, to be able to do this, you know, do what I love.
Yeah.
What did that first year of business look like? Like, what did you? Yeah, how did that go? Were you doing a little bit in the lead up to when you left your job? Were you doing some work for some clients, and you just accelerated that, or was it basically a fresh start? All right, here we go, blank piece of paper.
Yeah, I think that first year was scary to start with. So, yeah, look, I was always doing a few things. Like, I was running a few tours to take people swimming with whales in Tonga and taking photos of that. And I was doing a bit and pieces in between, you know, my full-time job. I'd take time off and then I'd go do my photography job. But when the transition was very quick, actually, because, like I said, in marketing and advertising, I was working on a government client for 2 years, and then typical government fashion, they go, oh, well, we don't need that project anymore, so we don't need you. And it was like, you know, it was that kick that sort of went, all right, well, then I'll just go hold the whole hog and see what I could do. And yeah, that first year was, I didn't know if, you know, I would make any money or, you know, be able to make a living from this, but I was pretty focused. So it was a lot of work, a lot of networking, a lot of trying to integrate into so many other things. Because I think at the time, you know, it's hard to just be a photographer, because, you know, there's not many of us that are full-time that make a living doing this genre. So I had to diversify. You know, I was a social media person, I was a videographer, I was a, you know, photographer, I was you know, speaking at events, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I tried to spread myself wide enough to cast a net that, you know, might open up opportunities. So I think, you know, it was more, I had the momentum, and I was going to either go hard or go get broke. So it was an interesting sort of journey.
And just on that, you talked about bringing in your skills from your corporate life into starting a new business as a full-time professional photographer, or elevating your business. How different do you think that would have been if you didn't have that history in marketing and project management? How different do you think your journey would be? Do you think it would have still unfolded in a similar fashion, or albeit a harder slog? Or how do you think that's helped?
Yeah, I actually think it helped a great deal, just from a business perspective. Like, I think a lot of creative people are very creative, but they don't necessarily, want to, touch the business side of things, because, like, I don't think people realize, but 80% of my life is admin, so, the other 20% is amazing, but, you do a lot of work, and just understanding, like I am a bit of a spreadsheet sort of guy. I'm a planner.
Nice.
I'm that sort of person. Which, like I said, I'm always at conflict with myself, because that side of my brain is working to sort of keep my business running, but the other side of my brain wants to be creative and just go do amazing things. So I'm always like at a bit of a conflict. But definitely, my background helped a lot in kicking off the career. And I think the other thing too is just being able to adapt. Like, in the industry I was in, you constantly change. Everything every day is a change. So understanding that, if that's a normal part of process, then you can adapt to change with that, and not be set in your ways. Because I think it's an industry where a lot of people, you can specialize and be an amazing artist and have a specific style and stuff like that, but the way I do things, and everything I'm trying to do, means that I need to adapt.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you did that you can remember, if you can recall, initiatives that you took to try and get your name and your business and your brand out there in front of people? Is there anything you can remember that worked really well, or that flopped really bad? I'm trying to think of. I've seen people send out packages to potential clients and things like that with prints in them, or books or anything. Was there anything that you come up with where you're like, all right, this is how I'm going to get my name out there?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because I think it was a bit of everything. And I think, to tell you the truth, like, the competitions work a lot. Like, when I'm winning, obviously people want to, come and do photography with me, come on trips, come, see what I'm seeing. So that definitely helps a lot. And I always tell people, the competition side of things, it keeps you fresh. It keeps you, thinking about how, like, the caliber of photographers you're up against sometimes is just phenomenal. And, it just keeps you thinking about new ideas, concepts and ideas. So yeah, there was definitely one part of it. I think, the other part was being open to opportunities, and sort of also at the same time, I've tell people this a lot, but say no. Like, I say no. So many people said, when you're starting out, we can give you, we can give you credit, we can give you exposure, we can give you this and that and stuff. But I just thought to myself, well, if I'm not going to be, satisfied, with doing a job and for free, then I'm not going to do it. I'd rather have no money than someone, undervalue your work. So I was pretty stern about that. I was sort of like, I know when to say no, and I say no a lot, but when the opportunities did come up, they were good opportunities. They weren't just shitty opportunities.
So does that mean you didn't? Sorry, Greg. I just wanted to. So you didn't do any free work, or you really picked it? If it was something that you would have to do for free, it had to tick the boxes that you were looking for some sort of creative pursuit, or something you were going for. Yeah, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say if it was free work, it was never free work. I always ask for something. Like, even if it's minimal, you ask for something. So if someone says, I can do this for you, and let's say they own a car they'll say, okay, well, great. If you can detail my car for the next 3 months, that's fantastic. So I'd always look.
That's old school bartering, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it.
But it's the way you've got to do it. Otherwise, you will feel undervalued and you won't be motivated to do a job. So when I was starting out, it was a lot of, I can do a free job, but at the same time, maybe down the track you can give me this, or you can help me with this, or introduce me to that person. So I was trying to be as savvy as possible, and trying to avoid, one-off things that were really not going to get me anywhere. But it was still a long slog. I say I went full-time in 2015. 10 years later, it's only sort of, I guess, been in the last 5 years that things have sort of come together professionally. And except for the problem, COVID caused a lot of problems.
You're preaching to the choir, sister. I want to talk to you about in the early days, you began underwater photography, and you are an OM ambassador. I want to put that out there. What was the first camera setup from OM that you took underwater?
It's one I still use even now, but it's an EM1 Mark II, because they made an underwater housing for it. So Olympus used to make their own underwater housings, which was fantastic, and they were just solid. Like I've never had a piece of equipment that's solid that I could just do anything to and it'd be fine. And I use that for I'm just trying to think. So the Wildlife Photographer of the Year a couple of years ago, where I was in the portrait category. The one with the there's a leafy sea dragon and a sea lion behind each other. That was taken on the Olympus camera. So I always tell people, I say, like a lot of my awards have actually been taken with the OM system. So it's been fantastic. But that was one of the first rigs I had set up on the OM system. Yeah,
this is the lead image on your product on your website.
Yeah,
it's a great shot.
That's phenomenal.
Gosh,
wow, it just takes your breath away. Once you sort of observe, because when I first glanced at your website when we were researching for this podcast, I just thought that was seaweed floating in front.
I only just learned that it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a great, it was a great experience too, because when I was in London and they were announcing the awards and that photo, the guy was doing the intro and he's going, and you see this beautiful sea lion and this kelp around, but when you stop and look in, you see there's a dragon there. The whole audience went, like they didn't see it either. That was like that's cool. Everyone didn't notice it, but now they see it. So
that's right, hiding in plain sight.
That was
quite literally. And just while we're on the topic of your underwater work, so what sort of were you a natural swimmer as a kid or as a young adult? Did you like enjoy diving before the camera came into it?
Yeah. Look, like I said, being Australian and living by the coast, I think we're in the water as much as possible. But I always love being in the water. I still love being in the water. When I started taking camera into water, that was probably a few years after I'd learned to scuba dive. And I think that was the thing. I scuba dived and I thought, I'm seeing all these cool things. I should get a little camera. And I eventually got a camera. I took some terrible shots, like for years with it, because I didn't know how to shoot an underwater camera and what all the dials and buttons meant. But like the ocean and my affinity with the ocean's always been there, and it's just grown over years. And it's grown from not only photography but to sort of have conservation, protection, education aspect to it as it's gone further on. So that's for me, that's very positive way to go.
And just while we're on that topic, you're providing all the best segues. I don't need to do it anymore. I like a good sloppy segue, but you're providing some nice clean segues. You do some research and work with charitable organizations around conservation and raising awareness. Greenpeace, Sea Shepherd. I don't know what the other ones are. WDSC.
Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society. Yeah.
So Yeah, how did you get involved with that? Was that something that you sought out to do as part of your, I guess, your business of running a photography company? Was that part of it, that you wanted to seek out some way to give back, or did they come to you?
Yeah, it's more indirect actually. I wasn't seeking it, but a lot of organisations started to see my photos, and they sort of said, we've got a campaign coming out to save whales or to save something. Would you be able to help? And it's probably the one area where when I knew it was a good cause and for an organisation, it was free. Like that was when I worked for free. So they sought me out mainly just because of the type of imagery, and then over the years it's become more of a I work with a lot of organizations now from a science point of view. So maybe I'm out in the field shooting something and I come back with a data set and say, here's all the data from, that project. And I give it to scientists, government, researchers, citizen science, things like that. So it's become a bit more proactive now. So if I know I'm doing something specific, I might call University of Macquarie and say, hey, I'm doing this with cetaceans and I'm going to get this data. Do you want it? Sometimes they say, no, not interested. Other times they say, oh, that's fantastic. Great. Send it to us. So these days it's a bit more proactive, but in the early days, it was more that they approached me because they, were trying, they had campaigns to, deal with the, various causes around the world.
Yeah. Very cool.
Dennis has a question. I don't know if this will make sense or not, but he says, Scott, we are in a catastrophic environmental situation literally at the end of my street here in South Australia. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, look, the South Australia situation is terrible at the moment. That algal bloom, killing so much marine life. I'm not even sure what you could do there, or if they've even assessed, what the cause is, how it's happening. Obviously, everything we do as the human race, is impacting the environment. Then there is global warming. So you have no idea how it's affecting, the entire planet. I'd say, look, you can only change yourself. It's very hard to change others. So what I always advise people is do what you can to, build awareness, to get involved, to see what you can change. And often you can only change things in your own backyard. It's hard to change things at a national, international, global level. But really, the more people that are aware of these sort of situations and what's going on, the more you get the right people involved, and the more we'll be able to help maybe. But as a photographer, I like to put imagery out there that people question, go, what's that, or what's going on, or what's happening. And I think situations like what's going on in South Australia at the moment are devastating for our marine environment. And I think the hardest thing, it's such a strong marine community down there, it's going to be hard to work out how long it's going to take to recover. We all dive in these underwater worlds, and there's unique endemic Australian species that are found nowhere else in the world, and they're dying. They're rare, they're endangered, and they're dying. So it's a tough question, but I would say if you can use your photography or your connections or your networks to build awareness, then you're taking a step forward.
I think it's a fair point, isn't it? That as photographers, especially, but nature and wildlife and underwater photographers such as yourself, there is a unique opportunity there, because it's a lot of the stuff that you see and experience, the rest of us have no idea about. We see the odd picture, and might be a little news story every now and then if you watch the news. But I guess through photography of this nature, we can really put out there that, hey, this stuff is worth saving. This is how beautiful and magnificent it is, and it's disappearing.
Especially because a lot of people, not everyone knows what's going on in the world environmentally, and it's not their fault. Everyone lives day to day, and I find it's a struggle too. I can educate a lot of people, but if you live out in the suburbs of Sydney or Melbourne, and the most important thing might be that there's a pothole in your road that's causing damage, there's a light out, there's people have got to live life day to day, so it's harder get that message out there. But it doesn't mean you don't try. And the more, like, the amount of people I've just spoken to and just walked up and said, hey, do you know what's happening here with blah blah blah, and they've gone, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know these things happen. So even just a conversation can make a difference.
Some great questions coming in from the chat. This one from Neil. Awesome work, Scott. How do you concentrate on your subject matter when lots of things want to eat you?
Look, I'm aware of all the the predators and critters and things that can harm you. I'm good at. To tell you the truth, I'm really a behavioral photographer. Like, I really enjoy behavior of wildlife and animals and nature. So I try to observe and learn as much as I can before I interact with various things. So when it comes to your subject matter, know your subject matter, how they're going to interact, how they're going to react to you, how they react to other creatures. For example, if I'm shooting whales and there's a great white shark around, how does the whales react to the shark, and how does the shark react to me, and vice versa. So you got to be thinking what's going on in this circle of wildlife going on. So I do think about it, and I'm conscious of it, and I do take precautions for various things, but at the same time it doesn't distract me from my focus. Like, it's more sort of, I'm aware of it. I will not put myself in a situation where it's going to be extremely dangerous. By accident, it happens sometimes. Recently, I was up in Northern Territory about 3 weeks ago, and we were swimming in hot springs up there, and there happened to be a croc in the water, and I had a quick look under a log and saw how big the croc was, and thought, all right, I'm not going back there. So it can be accidental, but got out of the water, talked to the rangers. They shut the park down for 5 days, but
wow! And you were in the pond with them. Just a reminder to our international listeners and viewers that all the stuff you hear about Australian wildlife is true. We do often have crocodiles in swimming holes, and we do often have sharks on beaches. Well, not on the beach, obviously, but at the beach, and plenty else in between. Plenty more in between.
Gosh, that croc, that's terrifying. Every time I've been up in Northern Territory and you swim places or there's swimming holes and stuff like that, I'm always like, how do they know there's no crocs in here?
Exactly.
They don't know, apparently. they
don't know until someone gets bitten.
Is it supposed to be a swimming hole that has no crocodiles? Is that?
It's one that there's a lot of swimming holes that they know usually have fresh water, or maybe they don't see them that often. But this one was definitely bigger.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It
was looking and I didn't even take a photo, so you can see how concerned I was.
Yeah. Okay. So you do put self-preservation before photography when it comes to that. Okay.
Yeah. Smart.
Another question from Patrick J Photography. How do you decide on where and what you're going to shoot next?
Good question. I'm passionate about so many different species and stuff like that, and I want to see them all, but it depends. Sometimes I'll be working with an organization or a production crew who are filming something specific, and because I've had experience with the species, or I have the permits to allow me to do things, they tend to approach me. So sometimes that's part of the reason why I will, go after a subject. Sometimes it's just, there's a cool subject and I want to shoot it. Like up in Broome, there's mud skippers. I love them. I can lay in the mud for days on end, and there's mud skippers jumping around everywhere, and I love photographing them. So sometimes it's about a concept. So I'm always looking for a new idea, a new way, because there's a lot of stuff that's been shot 1,000 times, and it's been shot well, it's shot differently. So finding a subject that I haven't, I'm interested in, or I want to shoot differently, or I want to show my audience a different perspective of looking at that subject, that's usually how I'm choosing the subject matter I'm going after. And location as well. Like if I'm in Antarctica, I might focus on leopard seals or penguins or things like that underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
What sort of crazy wetsuit do you have to shoot underwater in Antarctica?
So it's a dry suit. So I wear what's called a trilaminate dry suit, and underneath it you're wearing, warm onesies and thermals and stuff like that. So you're comfortable, but it's still like it's like walking into an industrial freezer and sitting in there for 10 minutes. No matter how warm clothes you got on, you're still going to freeze.
Yeah. But then your face is still.
Your face is a little bit exposed, but
Yeah.
you get used to it after a while. Once you get used to the cold, it's fine. You just go numb.
Yeah. How long might you be out for on a shoot like that in Antarctica or something in the water? Like, what's the time limit on that?
I think the average time for me, if I'm just on snorkels, probably about an hour and a quarter. If I'm on dive, 25 minutes before I'm freezing. Like, it's pretty cold. Yeah.
It's not a big window of opportunity when you think about it, because you're also relying on wildlife to show up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and you got to be reactive. Like, a lot of the time I'll be on the sailing yacht, we're sailing along, and then something's happening. And, it's a dry suit on average takes about, let's say, 10 minutes to put on. I think I can get it on in about 3.
Nice.
You should make a video of that. That would be amazing. Just like rapid getting ready for a shoot in Antarctica.
Yeah,
that would be
jumping
great.
into ice.
Yeah. Just a GoPro.
That's a documentary on its own right there.
Yep.
Now, of course, we have been talking and celebrating your recent win with the Australian Photographic Prize. I just want to bring up the image, if that's okay with you, Scott, from your win. Just so we can have a little talk about it. Where is it? It's here. Just got to get this thing to work. Okay. So can everyone, I want to show this comparison to begin with. So this is Scott's winning photograph on the left. Can you tell us about your photo and the setup and the situation, please, Scott? But just before you do, I found quite compelling the way that the Australian Photographer of the Year and the International Photographer of the Year, they've juxtapositions the two photos side by side. The international winner, whose name I won't even try to pronounce because I'll butcher it, has taken an aerial shot of Gaza with people praying next to utter destruction. And I think the juxtaposition of that against your photo, which talks about, it's more about peace and connection, and it's just quite a compelling side-by-side comparison of the world that we live in. But that's just my random thoughts on the subject. I want to bring up your winning photo. Here we go here. Can we have a little info about this one?
If you just narrow your window a little bit, that might make that thing bigger, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know that works.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so this is a photo of 2 baby elephant seals, and it was taken in the Falkland Islands. I think it was, and basically, so the females have the babies, and then less than 3 weeks later, they leave. So they've been nursing the babies, giving them milk and everything, and then 3 weeks later they leave, and they're left to their own devices. So there's no parental guidance or how to go hunt for food and things like this. So what happens is these little weaners all sort of lay next to each other and stay in little creches and groups until they're sort of ready to go out to sea and forage for themselves. And I always love these type of animals because they're like seals. They're what we call thigmotactic. They're animals that like to touch each other. So they're always sort of touching each other. They're always rolling on top of each other. They're always like, these little fat little bundles of joy, rolling around on top of each other. They're super curious as well. But in this situation, I saw this sort of moment where one was putting his little fin over the other one and the other one was sort of snuggling up, and it just had this beautiful connection, and you could see the underbelly on one side and the dark back on the other side. And for me it just drew that connection and that sort of bond between these sort of animals, and how they're left to their devices, and then that's it. They've got to survive, and they're in, Antarctic, subantarctic waters, and so they've got predators as well. So it's just that, like I said, that bond and connection, that I felt, sort of was exemplified through this image, and I try to keep it as subtle and simple as possible as well. And apparently I did the right job.
Yeah, clearly. I think, often we're used to seeing, predominantly with wildlife images, we tend to see more of, headshots and full body shots. And, you've cropped in really close on this to capture this really important connection that you've just described. And, the image helps to tell that story. Can I ask what sort of lens you used in this situation?
Question. What lens did I use?
Got you now.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was probably a 70 to 200. Yeah, I think. Without looking at, sorry, I should have looked at my files, but
no, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just curious,
yeah.
like, what you're approaching this, and how close would you have been from the subject, do you reckon?
Yeah, I was pretty close in the Falklands. Yeah, the limits are a little bit different, and I was probably up a bit higher, elevated. I'd say maybe on some rocks, looking down onto the sandy beach. But yeah, it's a pretty tight shot. Like, even if you look at the original, there's no room. It's a full frame.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. What do you remember if there were many other images sort of from this moment, like from the sequence, and how you went about choosing this one, or was it immediately apparent to you that this was the shot that you would submit from that moment, or was there a few options that you had?
Yeah, there were a few frames, and often it's just a slight different movement or angle or line. Yeah, I'm looking for obviously the leading lines in this, sort of drawing my attention through the image. But like often with a lot of shots, I'll take multiple frames, but I don't take a huge amount if I know it's a subject that's not moving or sitting still, because it's quite easy. I think if you look at when we looked at the leafy and the sea line shot from the WPY, I only had 3 frames in that. I had the first frame where the seal was looking to the right, second frame where it was looking to the left, and the one where it was looking right at the sea drag in the middle. So sometimes that's all you have is 3 frames, and out of those 3 frames, I got one that was perfect. So depending on what I'm shooting, I'm trying to be a bit more conservative with my shots. It's harder with other subjects that are moving, like if it's birds or something that's running. I'll probably take thousands of shots and hope one's in focus. But yeah, generally, I'm trying to keep it a fairly tight sort of number of frames.
Yep. And that must be only amplified in terms of difficulty, I imagine, when you're underwater and you're wearing a mask and you're holding a camera. I think we've seen a photo of your camera. You're on one of your underwater setups where it's got the lighting. Are they like arms that come out for lighting? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, talk to us about that process of actually taking shots underwater. What is that? How does that differ from? Sorry, guys. How does that differ from being above water?
Yeah, look, it's a huge degree of difficulty when you take a camera into the underwater world, because you're not only dealing with so many factors. Like, you've got to deal with your own buoyancy, underwater. You've got to make sure that everything you're doing is working well, especially in places where there might be silt on the bottom. You don't want to stir it up and mess up your shot. There's the fact that the deeper you get in water, you lose red light. So you need to go, okay, well, that's why I've got flash units to add light into the subject to bring back the natural light. How close you are to your subject, because density of water will affect. You don't really get a really good depth of field, because if water is not clear, then doesn't matter how big your aperture is, it's not going to have any point of difference. So you've got to think about so many more things just because of the water factor. And it's it literally is to a point where even, where the lighting is, like, it's not like traditional where you've got a flash, you've got some, set up in a studio and it's great. The lights are in the same spot. Underwater, if you go too close to something, too far away, it means shadow. It means harsh, spotlights. And even just me slightly moving strobe left or right makes a huge difference, or putting one bit higher. So it's a lot more, involved, and it's a lot more thinking, and it does make you be a better photographer and diver at the same time, because you are literally doing everything manually to create a scene.
Yeah. Plus trying to avoid being eaten by sharks.
Do you have?
No, I'm always looking for a shark.
Just photograph it. Do you have any go-to settings? So, and I know obviously the situations change constantly, but underwater, I know, like with stuff I've done in the past, I know if this is going to sound crazy comparing it to a dance floor at a wedding, but if Jim and I were shooting a wedding, we can jump on a dance floor at a wedding. There's a foolproof setting you can use to get those shots, and then you can experiment beyond there or adapt to the situation that you're in. There's sort of like, have you got like a go-to aperture and shutter speed, and then from there you start to tweak, ISO and your lighting to suit the situation, and then even, but is there like all right, I've got 3 minutes, I got my suit on, I'm going to jump in, and these are my starting sort of point settings for underwater shots for, I guess, animals and wildlife?
Yeah, I'm trying to do as little as possible to change things underwater. So I will always probably have my ISO set the same. I'll pretty much have my shutter speed set the same, because underwater, even with flash, you only can sync to about 1/200th of a second. So that's never going to really change. So the only thing that really changes is my aperture. And even if I've got lighting, I don't really need to change my ISO, because, I know what I'm working with. There are definitely a starting point for underwater when you're doing lighting. When you haven't got lighting and you're doing natural light, it'll depend on the subject. Let's say I've got, Australian fur seals zipping around like crazy. I need a fast shutter speed, 1/1000th of a second. So I'll need to pump my ISO up, and aperture's not that important because, they're going to come close and stuff. So with lighting, yep, I can have a set thing. With non-lighting, it's subject dependent.
Okay. John Pickett wanted to know in the chat here somewhere, how do you maintain and protect your camera gear beyond using enclosures with all the underwater work that you do?
Most of the time, if you're doing underwater work, definitely all the cameras are in a underwater housing. It doesn't mean they're safe. Cameras get flooded. Yeah, minor things happen. You've got O-rings that seal everything. If a hair gets in the way, then bang, there's water in your camera. So you got to be diligent about cleaning gear, making sure, O-rings are clean, everything's greased up. Like with underwater kit, it's all about keeping the kit so perfectly, in tune. Otherwise, you will make a mistake. And the other thing too is like, you need to almost have a process in your head. I go, this is step 1, 2, 3, 4. Because if you miss one of those steps, you'll screw up your camera. But, having gear above water, I shoot in so many conditions with water splashing on cameras. These days, most cameras are environmentally sealed. So I rely on that a bit, to, the stuff I've put the OM systems through, like mud, water, sun, everything, snow. The good thing is most cameras can deal with most things, and I'm in extreme conditions all the time. So you gotta know how to protect your gear.
And so have you ever sorry, Jim, you go.
I was going to say, I don't think people realize how far you kind of can push the gear with, mud and rocks and sand and stuff. Like they're a lot less precious than what you maybe think.
Yeah, but it's like but on the other hand, they can be temperamental as well. Yeah, it's like we've done it both directions, where they've been fully flooded, rained on, and all that kind of stuff, and been fine. And then they can also have funny problems from not much environmental stuff. So it's sort of it's tricky.
Yeah, it's fun. Jumping in a pool, for example, with a R5 Mark II. It's a questionable decision.
when it's not when it's not in housing. Yeah, that was that was a mistake.
So Scott, what have you ever lost? Like, have you ever had a catastrophic failure in an underwater rig and lost some gear, or had some gear that severely compromised?
A few times. It's funny though. It usually is when I've set up gear for other people and they're using the gear. They make a mistake, but generally, I'm pretty good. It's more stupid mistakes like leaving the lens cap on your lens when you put it in underwater environment, getting down on the dive and going, oh shit.
Has that really happened?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Rookie
awesome.
mistake.
That's classic.
Oh, that is so good to hear that the 2025 Australian Photographer of the Year could also leave a lens cap on.
Yeah, still do stupid things like that.
It literally happens to the best of us.
That's funny. So Anthony's got a question here that's kind of along those lines. How much gear do you take down with you? Is it just a single body and a lens, in the housing, or do you sometimes carry two bodies for backup or a different lens focal length?
Yeah, you sort of have to make the decision about which lens and which body you take. So basically, the rigs are so big and heavy, and underwater they're neutral, but you want to take. Basically, if I'm shooting whales, I'm taking a wide angle lens, one body, and I'm shooting small macro, I'm taking a macro lens, etc. So you only have one choice. It's not like you can go, I'm shooting macro, and a whale goes past. Just, you might.
So you don't just have a second camera and housing hanging off a lucky strap over your shoulder.
just floating.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
It's hard enough just to do anything in water. But I always have, if I'm on a boat or something, I might even have two rigs set up, one for stills, one for video, depending on what I'm shooting. But generally, you have to make one decision.
Yeah. So if you were doing that, you would just like pop up, swap the rig over, and then go back under again and that kind of stuff, working from the boat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just want to jump in with some thoughts. I think a lot of people might take for granted just how difficult, and you've explained some of that, but even just being on a boat trying to set up, you're in Antarctica, you're on a boat, it's freezing, your hands are numb. Even just setting up a camera on the boat before you even get anywhere near the water must be a challenge in its own right.
With boats, there's always water splashing, and it takes one tiny thing, like even a bit of water droplet on your lens or on the dome port, can make a mistake. I worked with a Discovery crew one time, and they left their underwater housing open overnight just to keep it dry, and we're in the South Pacific, and all of a sudden they put all their gear on and they were down shooting, and all of a sudden they seen these lines going across their dome. Apparently ants got into their dome port, so they were underwater, and these little marching ants were going across the side of their dome.
That's so cool.
So any tiny
imagine what the ants thought.
Yeah, exactly. So any tiny thing can just ruin it. Like you got to be like, everything you do underwater is sort of like, is it working? Double checked. Is there any marks on the glass? So much stuff.
That's crazy. I want to find out where you are right now, because you're under the awning of your car, just hanging out. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in. Where am I? I'm on the Give River Road.
Yeah,
I'm on the Give River Road up in the Kimberleys, sort of traveling across the sort of Kimberley area to get to Derby and Broome, and then slowly making my way back down the coast over the next month.
And so, are you on a particular job or a project? Have you got something in mind that you want to achieve this trip, or are you following a familiar path where there's some cracking shots?
No, it's basically my wife and I are traveling because I've put 3 months off aside so I didn't have to work and I could go take photos. But no, there's no particular goal in mind. It's just I haven't seen this part of Australia, so I wanted to go see it. So that's and getting some nice cool photos along the way is a bonus.
Yeah, nice.
I'm trying to zoom in on you at the moment. Hopefully through this satellite system I've got. Hang on, where am I? Where are you roughly?
If you type in Ellen Bray Station, Ellen Bray, ELL
Oh, ELL. Sorry.
Yeah, ELLENB. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's where I am. Exactly. Where I am.
Whoa. Okay.
Oh, look, you got your own airstrip.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful, like an oasis.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit and get a bit of a. Okay, not much.
Not much there.
Not much there. We'll zoom right out quickly for those that are joining us from all over the world. So, for reference, Jim, Greg, and I, we're down here. We're at the opposite corner. You couldn't be further away from us, really. There's not many places that would be further away.
And for the flat earthers, we are in a soundstage in Miami. So we're not real.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you're enjoying the travels through that area?
Yeah. It's it's a lot more remote, which is nice. Except for I've got no power here, so I have to rely on batteries and things like that going off. But no, it's great. Lots of different things that you see along the way: wildlife, scenery. Beautiful clear skies. So it's great for astro. Like it does. I'm on holiday, so it's nice. I've got no.
Oh, we lost him.
Got no internet.
Got no.
We've lost you, Scott.
Starlink.
You can still hear us. You've gone still on us. Just give it a minute. There we go. We've got him back.
Lost you for a second.
Lost you for a second. Elon's messing with us with Starlink.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got a big switch in his office and he just turns it off every now and then just for giggles. Wow, so that's a long way. And so, whereabouts do you hail from originally? You're from Western Australia?
No, I'm from Sydney.
Okay.
So Sydney, born and bred. So lived there all my life. But in the last couple of years, 2.5 years, my wife and I decided to move to Esperance. Amazing part of Australia, like so beautiful beaches, good environment for us. There's wildlife, there's marine life, there's diving, there's like so many cool things. So it was one of those places. We were actually traveling during COVID. We were on we were doing a lap around Australia, but then this thing called COVID hit and we got stuck in WA for 7 months, which was a good place to get stuck because it was like COVID didn't exist in WA. So so we managed to travel around, but we kept coming back to Esperance. So, we found that we had a connection with it. So we ended up, finding a place, and now we're WA, Western Australia's.
Is it? I heard a rumor. Is it true that your wife is quite the photographer also?
Yeah, she's a great photographer. She does a lot of underwater. She loves like the above water stuff. She likes lizards and snakes. She's a snake handler as well. So she does a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, she loves nature. She gets involved in a lot of local community causes. Looks after kangaroos. She's got to do some volunteering with a bat hospital up in North Queensland next year. So yeah, she's very involved.
Oh, that's awesome. Does she also use OM system equipment?
She does actually, yeah. So
that's handy.
Mainly a lot of mine. So I have to fight to get my cameras back a lot of the time. But yeah, she definitely uses the OM kit. Yeah, no, we love it. It's nice, and with the new OM1 Mark II, I'm just like shootings, like they've got a lot of these computational sort of cool things on it, and it's making life so much easier. Like built-in ND filters and star focus, all this sort of stuff. I go, oh wow, that's great.
Right, actually, I'd love to hear. So what are they the main computational features that you use? Do you use any of the other ones that are built in your regular work? I'd love to hear more about that.
It depends. It's more of a need. Like if I've started just trying to use a lot of the stuff they've got, like gradient ND filters. So if you're doing like landscape stuff, you can now put a gradient in there, which is pretty cool. like that's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of things. What else have I been using? I'm just trying to think, because I've been almost tackling every genre this last couple of months, because I'm on a mission to learn as many genres as I can. So I've been doing macro, astro, landscape, etc. But yeah, no,
maybe Jim's looking for a second shooter for some boudoir and weddings
and wedding stuff. Yeah, you can really expand. Yeah, the problem is Scott had come into those categories at the Australian Photographic Prize and sweep those as well first year. Everyone would be like, ah.
I think you're safe, Jim. Don't worry.
I mean, is it a good time to? I'd love to. So, there's a couple other things we want to do on this show while your batteries are still lasting. One of them's look through some more of your images, but since we're talking about gear, it would be good to get a bit of a rundown of the kit that you use and any go-to sort of favorites. But also, I'd like to hear personally, just because we recently Greg and I tested the OM3. And I'm traditionally, I've shot full frame for a long time, and I was kind of thinking, these tiny little sensors, they won't even work, they won't do anything. And I was pretty surprised about the output of that camera. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the pros and cons of a system with that sensor size are.
Yeah, look, I shot Canon for a number of years, and I've worked with the Sony system as well. And when I first transitioned, I thought the same thing. Like I think I got so used to things working in a certain way and doing things a certain way that I felt, I was going to be missing out and stuff. But I think what's happened over the years, when I started doing stuff with Olympus, I wasn't an ambassador. I was just doing some projects with them, and the gear was working for what I needed to, or if it wasn't, I could find a way around working with the gear. But now it's got to a point where, like with the OM systems, like the OM1, OM1 Mark II, I'm not compromising on anything, and from a working perspective, it hasn't made any difference, because like I said, I'm using the kit for everything I do, and for the awards photos as well. But yeah, and the lenses, they have some, they're an optical company. They make optics for medical, which is pretty cool when you go into their office and you see this medical system set up and all these tiny little things. It's amazing. So the fact that they've built optical for that and they've put it into their camera systems, has made all the pro lenses, the 300, the sharp lenses
You're just dropping out there a bit, mate. Sorry, we're just losing you again. Elon's playing around with that little switch.
Maybe got you back.
Oh, you're back. Yeah, I think we got you back.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, you were talking about the lenses.
Yeah, so most of the go-to lenses, 300mm is the one I use the most for most of birds and action stuff. The new 90mm lens is fantastic. It's a 2:1 macro lens. Loving it. It's fantastic for this focus stacking. So I'm doing a lot of that sort of stuff with the OM systems, like bracketing and focus stacking, like micro animals and insects. The 12-100 is the sort of lens, is my go-to lens when I'm just randomly don't know what's going to happen. I shot a great shot of a mountain gorilla in Rwanda, because I was sitting playing with my batteries and camera gear, and all of a sudden this gorilla just walks up next to me. And the only lens I had in my hand was the 12-100, and the 12 was wide enough to get this big male silverback in frame. It was a spectacular sort of moment, and just to be able to pull the camera around and go, oh, bang, shoot, so. And the 40-150 I use for a lot of action, like if I'm porpoising penguins and things like that. So they're probably the core 4 lenses I use. I use stuff when I'm playing with Astro and things like that, and But they're the core lenses. Pro lens is fantastic. Combined with the OM1 Mark II, in terms of sensors and things like that, quality is, I'm not lacking in quality anywhere or losing anything. If anything, it's making life easier.
Well, it's good enough to win awards, obviously.
Yeah.
So I guess that means none of us have any excuses, especially those people with those big GFX Fuji medium format things. They should be winning 8 awards for their huge photo. How do you find high ISO, and do you have a limit? Like, what's your kind of like? It's about as high as I'm comfortable going for an image that needs to be used in a certain format, or do you have any rules around that with the system?
To a degree, because a lot of the situations I'm in depends on the situation. So if it's extremely dark or extremely light, I will push it as far as it can go. But generally, on the OM systems, I'm sitting around 1000, 1250 ISO for any sort of low light stuff I'm doing before I feel that, I can't push it too far. Obviously, Astro doesn't make a difference. I'll sit anywhere from 2500 to 10,000, depending on what I need to shoot. But yeah, it's probably around the 1000 ISO marks the highest I'll go for most low light stuff. And then everything else is, with the macro stuff, I'm shooting around the 200 ISO, the recommended stuff. Like I'm having no, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? No real major impact on the range except for the situations I'm in. So I can push it. I can push the systems pretty far. So yeah, that's more an issue for me.
Yeah,
Nice.
It's very interesting because I was pleasantly surprised with the capability of that sensor after testing it compared to what my expectations were, being the fact that it is, significantly smaller than full frame. I kind of, I'd built it up into my head to maybe be more of a difference than it really is. I think.
Yeah.
Well, you get sold that. That's what you get. That's what the camera companies do. They sell you that you need. This is what you need. If you don't have this, you won't. Like, you can't be a professional photographer unless you got a full frame camera.
I think
you need a pro body.
And I think it depends too. Like, the dynamic range you need for the type of work I'm doing is within, what I need to be. Maybe if you were a landscape photographer and you needed a Fuji or a Hasselblad or something like that because you want to, drill down to, a blade of grass, and for sure, that's what you're going to use. And over the years, I've used almost every system because, with production, sometimes I'm using a red camera, sometimes I'm using various other Sony systems, but it's because that's what the client needs me to use, and that's so and so. So, but for my personal stuff and for my own wildlife professional stuff, the OM system's doing everything I need it to do.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I love it.
And so, Scott, outside of your core OM kit, what else are you traveling with? We've talked about that you've got you're doing drone photography, you're doing, some other work for clients or for a project. What else are you packing on the daily?
Yeah, mainly like I've got probably, I think I've got 3 OM1s and Mark IIs with me, and I've got a Mavic 3 Pro and a backup. Got a Mavic 4. I've got a lot of, because I'm on the road and stuff, I've got tripods I'm using for various things. I've got star tracking units. I've got Syrup Genies. I've got a lot of stuff with me because, like I said, I'm trying to shoot so many different things. I'm using a Godex V860 flash on the macro because that's, perfect for, I need that high speed sync. And so I can do 10 frames a second when I'm focus stacking. So most of the kit is accessorizing my OM gear to shoot all these specific genres. And I've obviously got underwater housing with Marlux, which is a brand that also I'm an ambassador for.
Fair enough too.
Should we should we bring up some photos maybe, or you got
let's
something
do
else
that.
What's the
Please.
best, Scott? Is it best to bring up your Instagram or website to just have a look through?
Yeah,
I'd say
Instagram's probably the best.
All right, I'll bring it up if you want, Greg. Then I can resize it if we need to.
Yeah, please. While Justin's doing that, Scott, just a question about travels. I imagine you've been to every continent now. More than once?
Good question. I think I've been to the 7 continents. It doesn't mean I've been everywhere, but
fair enough.
I've definitely stepped foot on the 7 continents.
Nice. Not many photographers can say they've done that. But my question to you is, you've traveled the world, you've seen some remarkable sights, you've seen the impacts of the environment and global warming, but on the lighter side of things, what's been the most memorable location you've ever been to as a photographer?
Wow. It's always a tricky question, because I think every place has like just an element of something amazing about it. But I think there's not many people that can say like that, like Antarctica beats most things. Like Antarctica is that wild, remote wilderness that is still untouched, that is still not, that impacted by, human. So, in that place, you've got towering icebergs, you've got wildlife everywhere, whales in the water, penguins, leopard seals, you got everything going on land. Like it's such an extravaganza, like a visual feast, that you just have too much to shoot. So it's a very surprisingly very hard place to shoot, because you really need to narrow your focus. And, I'm lucky enough to spend a lot of time there, but other photographers might, go down once, or, be on a ship where you're on a schedule and things like that. And, you really have to sort of go, okay, I've got, a very narrow focus. But I think once people go to Antarctica, they're addicted. It's the one place on the planet where, you'd be completely addicted. So, there's not many things that beat that.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's certainly
although I'd still argue a bowl of ramen in the middle of Shibuya would be close. But that's just me. That's just me.
Antarctica is definitely on my bucket list. It's just one of those ones that you just don't know. It's so expensive, and you don't want to be disappointed by not being able to do it properly or whatever. So you push it back to make sure that when you do go, that you can, I don't know, get the full experience, I guess. And that's where it is really tough.
It is hard, because a lot of people don't realize if you're on a ship, you're on a schedule. So if something amazing's happening, it's like, oh, okay, we got to go. And this is why I started doing the yacht charters and taking people to Antarctica on the yacht, because we go down there, we're there for a month. From the moment you get up to the moment you go to sleep, you can shoot as much as you want. You can stay in one place. If, there's whales jumping all around you, then you sit there for 6 hours and watch it, and, it's probably, if you're a serious photographer that wants to do wildlife and really build your portfolio, that's really the only way to do it. Get on a yacht, come down to Antarctica for a month.
Just ballpark. Oh, sorry. You go first, Jim.
Well, Justin, you could jump on one of Scott's tours.
I was just about.
There's one in 2027.
I know. I want to ask about the yacht, because I just want to know roughly, how many dual cab utes is that yacht trip worth? How many? Like just bulb. I don't know. Does it have do you have pricing for that, or is it something that it's not really? It's more tailored per person or something, or is there a ballpark you can give us?
Yeah, it's very specific, because we know we're down there for a month. So you've got 28 days down there, all your meals, everything's covered, your accommodation, the whole thing is inclusive. But, it's around the 30K mark.
That's US. A lot less. That's still a lot less than I thought you were going to say, based on because a lot of those cruises are nudging up towards those prices.
Exactly.
And they're like a 10-day.
And they're only going, exactly, 10 days and stuff. So that's why we focus on, photographers and filmmakers that come down on the yacht, because then,
It's a very specific journey, then, isn't it?
It's for
image making.
photographers.
Yeah.
And
so, do you charter a boat every time? Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, so I charter a polar yacht vessel. It's about 77 foot. It fits 9 of us, so it's usually myself and maybe another photography instructor. And we look after a group of 7 guests, and we have 3 crew. So the whole yacht is 12 people, including crew. And then we sail down there. Sailing takes about 4 days to get down there.
Oh, so it is literally a sailing ship.
Yeah, it's a sailing ship. So it takes about 4 days to get down there and 4 days back. So the rest of the time you're down in Antarctica. But for most of it, you're on this vessel as your base for the whole time, which is great. It's a super.
Where does it depart
vessel.
from?
We depart from South America, and we go that way.
Oh, through the Drake Passage. I don't know if this boat is big enough for me to not throw up the entire way. And back again.
I still get seasick, but it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Scott, how big take payments in lucky straps?
That's what I was going to ask.
Or are you looking for an old Sprinter Mercedes van?
Or well, one question I do have is if I could scrounge together that much money, is the hot tub on this boat, is it big enough for everybody, or do you have to take it in turns, or how does that work?
It's not a ski trip, Dustin.
There's no hot tub, but there is a hot shower.
There is a hot shower. Okay. So obviously it's not, and that's the difference. Is it's nothing like those kind of not over, but the fancy cruises that are probably more tailored to having a bit of a cruise experience / a wildlife experience where they pop you in the boats and like you say, you're on a schedule. This is a very different thing, much more immersed.
Yeah, this is definitely immersive because we're encouraging, people, if they want to get in the water, they can get in the water and shoot. If they don't want to get in the water, they can stay on land with the penguin colony all day if they want. If they want to shoot icebergs, then we'll go to the iceberg alley where there's amazing iceberg. It's designed to really target the needs of the individual photographer. So we do see so much there that we can take our time, because if something amazing's happening, we just sit there on the yacht, pull up anchor and go, okay, we'll stay here another night, or we'll stay here 3 days. There is so much to see and do for everyone that it works out perfectly. And I don't think most of the photographers that went on this recent trip in February are already talking about coming back with me on the Antarctica trip in 27. Also, we do a South Georgia trip, which is amazing. That's the jewel of Antarctica, is South Georgia islands, sub-Antarctic islands, where you have millions of pairs of penguin colonies. It's ridiculous.
Can we bring that up on the map, Justin?
What's that? The South Georgia?
The South Georgia Islands?
Yeah, one memento. Just while we're doing that, David Fluttersuck says, "Take my money now." Dave, if your friend Nick Fletcher's interested in going, tell him to let me know, and maybe I'll go with him if I can sell all of my humanly belongings between now and then. What are we doing? South Georgia Islands. Speaking of which, so Dave's here. David Clutterbuck is also here. Nick Fletcher's here. We've actually got Jim's group is here. Jim's Legal says, very disappointed to see that Jim is still looking like a lawn mowing contractor. So I'd be careful, Jim. I think they're
onto you, Jim.
I think they're planning on sending you a few strongly worded letters.
Yeah, you might get served.
We're going to collab soon.
Oh, yeah? Hang on. Oh, I've lost it. Oh, what's happened? Sorry, team. I said share and it didn't share. Here we go. Am I anywhere in the right vicinity? It zoomed right out, of course. Is this it?
Yeah, that's South Georgia Islands.
Okay. So what makes it so amazing? Hang on. Let's just get a bit of perspective compared to everything else. So it's not as you don't have to go as far south, because where would you normally go?
you'd normally go down to the peninsula, and you'd be on the east side of the peninsula. Yeah, east side of the peninsula. So you're basically going down the peninsula and following down south to around, anywhere beyond 66 degrees, somewhere between 66 and 76 degrees. Greg, just I might have to switch devices because one's going to run out of battery. So give me a second.
Yeah, no worries.
Right.
No, please.
We'll hold down the fort.
All right. Okay.
Dennis says this is amazing.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to switch devices. 1 second.
Yep.
Okay. Nick Fletcher says, fun fact, I once commanded at South Georgia Island. That's crazy. Would love to go back. Well,
is that because he was in the military?
Oh, hang on, we got Scott again.
Let us know, Nick.
Can you hear me? See me?
Yep.
Yeah,
we got you, mate.
Okay.
There we go. Very cool.
Yes, power is an issue in the middle of the outback when you don't have solar panels.
So you don't have solar or anything on the car?
No, because we're doing a mini trip, so we didn't bring everything with us. But generally, it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. There was a question here before from Neil. As you're traveling now, are you in swag, van, or tent, or other?
We're in a. I can probably show you actually. We're in a. We've got a 4-wheel drive, and the roof tent is down, but we have a roof tent on the top. Okay. And there's my wife.
Hi.
So yeah, we've got a 4-wheel drive. We're kitted out with a roof tent and canopy. We've got all our gear in the back, so we've got all our recovery gear, compressors, all that sort of stuff. Because when you're on the road, you need all that stuff because you're in the middle of nowhere, so you got to be able to look after yourself and put gear together. We've got fridge, we've got food, we've got everything's running. Perfectly like what you need to be a little bit remote. Normally when we travel with, other vehicles and stuff, we can probably stay remote for about 5 to 7 days. But with this one, because we're not kitted up for that long a stay, we can probably do 2 days without power. We can sort of rely on batteries for that long. But it's good.
Roy... Oh, we lost him.
I think...
You've just cut out there for a minute there, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I think we've got you back.
Yeah, I'm back.
The big question from Roy Bixby was, got a coffee machine?
No, have you got a coffee?
Oh
no. How are you even alive?
Yeah, we'll ship you one as soon as we can.
I'm not a coffee drinker.
Oh no. Well, I guess that's the end of the podcast then. Yeah, well, see you later.
That's all right, Scott. Either am I.
I didn't know that.
All right. Well, we won't keep you too long since you're starting to run out of batteries. But I really did want to.
I'm on my phone now, so we're good for a while.
Okay, sweet. All right. Well, we'll see if you can see stuff since you're on your phone. Hopefully, let me change the layouts again and get back to where we were at. First, before we have a look at some images, so just finally, I think everyone would love to know, what's so special about South Georgia Island, and what tips do you have for people hoping to get there one day?
So South Georgia it's got the largest king penguin colony in the world, and so they've got 250,000 pairs of king penguins that are breeding there. It's quite mountainous, beautiful sort of snow-capped mountains, but also lush green environments. Whales, seals, dolphins, everything around the islands. But it's very rugged and remote. Basically, we sail from the Falkland Islands over to South Georgia, and that still takes about 4 days on a yacht because it's still a bit of a distance. But you fly into the Falklands and then you get on the yacht and we go across. But the landscape alone is just the most dramatic landscape you've seen. You've probably seen it in lots of documentaries, but yeah, there's not much like it. It's it's probably a paradise for wildlife photographers, because you'll want to stay awake 24 hours. There's so much going on.
Our good friend of the show, Nick Fletcher, who was served in the military, he was once the commander of South Georgia Island.
Oh, wow.
He said, yeah, there's a detachment of Marines and some engineers on South Georgia to dissuade the Argentinians from any nonsense.
Well, if anyone could dissuade them, it would be Nick.
Yeah.
Right. So are there, is it kind of a one or the other? If you were trying to do a once in a lifetime trip to Antarctica, is it kind of like, hey, you're either going to actually go to Antarctica proper, or you can go to South Georgia Islands? And which one would you recommend people do
I'd say
if they only had one chance?
Yeah, I'd say the classic is Antarctica, because everyone wants to see Antarctica, and there's a lot to offer there. I think the thing is, South Georgia's one of those things that if you've been to Antarctica, you will most likely want to go to South Georgia, because everyone who goes to Antarctica just talks about South Georgia. It's quite funny. It's amazing. You get down to Antarctica, everyone's talking about South Georgia. So, yeah, it's a hard one. Like, eventually if you only had one, you do Antarctica. But if you're a really focused photographer and you really wanted specifically to build an amazing portfolio, then I'd say South Georgia, and even the Falkland Islands. Falkland Islands is phenomenal for wildlife. So I'd say that's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess you've gotten that close. If you make it to South Georgia Island, it's only a couple of extra days sailing and you're there, aren't you?
Not that easy.
No, it's not that simple.
I've never been, so
head over that way. We'll get there. All right, we'll have a quick look at some photos, which might be hard for you to see, but they're your photos. You'll know what they are.
No,
let's have a look. And I don't even know. I don't know what the best way to go about this is, because you've got so much work. Maybe just. We'll bring up anything that excites us, but otherwise, if there's any photos that you've got interesting stories behind or you want to talk about, just tell me and I'll bring them up.
Yeah, I'll take your lead. You pick them and I'll talk about them.
Let's go with that whale in the middle there.
This whale?
Yeah, the white one, the whitish one.
That's the only one that's not my shot.
Oh, okay. Let's use another one. But that's the best out of all of them, though.
That's from our tours last year in Tonga. One of my team took this photo because we saw a baby white whale, which is rare. Like, they haven't been seen before in Tonga. So that's why that one's in there. Yeah. So
wow.
But that's the reason that one's there.
Well, maybe there's a good time to talk about the tours in Tonga as well, because I did have that written down as a question to ask. Just run us over, like, what's the deal with those? Nope, we lost him. I wonder if he's still on Starlink, or if he's... There we go.
Yeah,
got you back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry, we're just moving batteries around. 1 second.
Oh gosh.
No, you're all right.
Sorry.
You're doing so well.
This is great. I love that you're in the middle of the northern WA.
Mm.
If anyone wondered,
our Tassie guests were remote.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's just if anyone wonders if this show is actually live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just while we are waiting for Scott to rejoin us via the power of the internet, I just want to remind everyone that this is the Camera Live podcast, proudly brought to you by Lucky Straps. If you're looking for a handcrafted, genuine leather camera strap that will last you a lifetime if you look after it, head to luckystraps.com. We offer a huge range of full length and wrist straps. We also sell belts, we sell merch, we sell hoodies, and we also sell Valorant gloves for winter. So please be sure to head over there and check it out. And while we're on the topic, the Camera Live podcast airs 2 shows each week. Monday evening, 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We have the Random Photography Show, where we just talk about what's going on in the industry. And then every Thursday morning, 9 a.m., Australian Eastern Standard Time, an interview with an amazing guest, such as the Australian Photographer of the Year, Scott Portelli. You're back with us, Scott.
Maybe.
Still got a little lag there.
Oops, hang on.
His mic's muted as well.
I'll bring him back on. He should be unmuted now.
Can you hear us, mate?
It's a funny face to freeze.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Good,
Okay.
good.
Oh, this is the best. All right. If you can hear us, I thought now might be a good time to talk about what is swimming with gentle giants. Since you mentioned, is that the trip the trips that run where that other photo was taken? Maybe.
Can you hear us, Scott? I feel like Elon's playing funny buggers again.
He's probably bored. Just pulling the switch.
It's on. It's just
He's got the plastic bag near the microphone.
He's watching our show, just turning it off and on, being like, "Ha ha." 34 Media says morning all. Good to see you. Oh,
Morning.
you've got the blister pack ChatGPT photographer kit. Nice. Nicely done. Did you make one of those for yourself, Greg?
No.
I didn't make one. I think Grant made me about 5.
Yeah, we did. I made one too.
Didn't have to make
Let's just go through some images while we're waiting for Scott to
I'll go
realign with the
I'll
satellite.
Try and find some images that were taken by him. Well picked, Greg.
There was
Sorry, guys. So the one with the bubbles, the circular bubbles, that is another award-winning photo.
It is. It's a reel though. So I was going to try and find the actual if he's got the shot posted, which he's probably posted it 1,000 times going back a long way. But yeah, that seemed like
it might have been pinned
his
at the
most
top.
awarded. Was it?
Maybe there was another one that was. Oh no, sorry.
No, but maybe it might be in this sequence. Yeah.
So this is
that's a crop of it though.
So Scott won second place in the Sienna Awards 2024 for this image with the bubble wall or bubble net whale shot, as he calls it. He also won, just trying to see what else he's won with that one.
Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year 2024.
Yeah, I believe so. Overall winner.
Yeah.
But it's also appeared in his exhibitions. He's run exhibitions with Australian Geographic. There was a Whale Vision exhibition in Iceland. A whole bunch of stuff there. But if you head to Scott's website, you can actually go to his awards page and just marvel at some of the stuff he's won.
Set aside half an hour if you're going to go to his awards page because it'll take you a while to get through it. It's insane.
I think we got him back.
He's back.
Hey.
Hey.
What's up?
I think that time it was Starlink. Starlink just decided not to work.
Yeah, that does happen. I've done a couple of podcasts with Starlink, and I've had good and bad experiences. But it's pretty amazing considering,
Yeah. Well, it's the only option sometimes in the middle of nowhere, so it's good. Anyway, I'm back.
You're back. We're actually just talking about where was it?
There it is on the left. Yep.
Is this your most awarded, most famous image? Would you say?
It did get a lot of attention last year. Obviously, I won the Australian Geographic Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and also in Sienna. It's at the Sienna Awards, which is a big international awards that was awarded there. So it's definitely done the rounds. Which was nice, nice to do. I went to Sienna for the awards, which was pretty cool. Sometimes it's just fun going to these awards events, So you either have a year where things are winning, and then you have a year where nothing happens.
With awards, you said you've done them for a long time, basically since 2015. That's when you started getting into it. As I guess. Was it primarily marketing to start with, or primarily a way to push your, push your photography skills? or was it just a mixture of both?
No, I think it was definitely the goal was to push the photography skills and just, I guess get some reiteration, sort of like, is the work good? Do other people think it's good? Does it stand up against, the best in the industry, that sort of stuff? Because then, you're either going in the right direction or, you're challenging yourself. So I think a bit of everything, but, like, obviously I'm not saying awards are the end all and be all, but from a promotional marketing point of view, they do help me. Not every photographer enters award competitions, and they do amazingly, and they have amazing businesses. But yeah, it's just a path that I've gone down. It helps me improve as well as helps with the business side of things.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've spoken to other guests who have won awards, and Mika Boynton comes to mind for her landscape work. When she first took up photography, she was teaching in the Kimberleys, I think, or at least in a remote area. And she would enter awards as a means to getting feedback because she didn't have any peers who lived around her, or there wasn't a photographic community around her. So she used the award process to gain constant feedback on her work so that she could then refine and improve her approach. And I think there's a lot to be said for, peer feedback of that nature, provided you're prepared to put up with or prepared to accept, the realities of feedback, and put aside ego and look at it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah, completely. Like, I think you've got to look at it as a learning experience as well. And even if you're not winning, you're still getting feedback. So it's, for me, like, it's always been, a way to understand, how I'm growing as a photographer as well. So, it's great. And yeah, like, me talking about Mika's work is amazing. Like, she's always producing just this high quality work. So if that was her goal at the beginning, she's definitely achieved more than she set out to do.
Yeah. Have you ever entered an image into awards that you thought was was like your favorite, that just going to crush it, your favorite image, and it didn't rank as high as you had hoped? Does that happen?
Yeah, that's 90% of the time. Yeah, right. Often I just go, "Oh, I love that photo. That's amazing." And I think the problem is that it's amazing because of either the story or my connection to it. Sometimes it's not amazing because maybe the judges don't see it the same way I see it, which is fine. Like I said, it's more, if you still love your work and you're passionate about your work and enjoy it, then it doesn't matter really what the end result is. So,
some beautiful work.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Like
We're just scanning through it. Do you have I mean, you're probably going to say no, but do you have any favorite subject when it comes to Antarctic and Falkland Islands and or South Georgia? Like, is there anywhere that if you're like, well, if there's one thing I'm going down there to photograph, it's this. I have a favorite.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be leopard seals. Like, leopard seals are, they're an apex predator. They're dominant down there. Like, they're top of the food chain, but they're sort of, they get a bad rap, but they're quite a curious, intelligent animal. And just because they've got these massive teeth doesn't mean they're going to eat you. But they're just very amazing creatures to interact with. Like, they're just beautiful, very prehistoric looking. When you look at their face, they look more reptilian than seal. So definitely down in the polar regions, it's that. It's funny enough, in Australia, I'm addicted to sea dragons. I love leafy sea dragons. So anything underwater will be about leafy sea dragons with me these days. So, but yeah, in the polar regions, you can't go past a leopard seal.
That's a scary smile on that seal.
Yeah, they look vicious, those teeth.
But yeah, I can see what you mean about this sort of, this prehistoric kind of, it's almost like a dinosaur in some ways. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What else? Talk to us about any of these images, because they're all stunning.
Yeah, I guess like I said, like a lot of that stuff is on my Instagram is a lot of underwater stuff because, like I said, I'm more well known for my underwater photography, and surprisingly, when I put other genres up there, I sort of lose followers.
Really?
So it's a funny way that how the whole social media works. Like it's predominantly that's there, but then I've got a few other Instagram accounts that have got purely aerial photography and others that just Australian photography and things like that. But the turtle one, have a look at the turtle one with the jellyfish, for example. So that's a shot I took up in Byron Bay. I was out on a dive and these jellyfish were eating these the turtles were eating these jellyfish, and what they do is they eat the tentacle parts first and the underside of the jellyfish. These are giant jellyfish as well, so these things huge. Are massive, and the turtles fight over the jellyfish, so they're fighting each other. They'll grab the jellyfish and pull it away, but yeah, it's one of those things. And I have a few versions of these turtles, and that's another photo like the whale spiraling one where it's done really well in the competition circuit over the years. So yeah, it's an interesting species to shoot in doing behavioral stuff. But like I said, a lot of my work is behavioral work. I enjoy watching behavior and showing people, people to go, oh, I didn't know, turtles ate jellyfish. That sort of, when you get that response, quite good.
Yeah. And I'm really fascinated about your experience. I think you mentioned earlier in Rwanda about photographing. Was it you're photographing gorillas in Rwanda?
Yeah, Rwanda. There should be a shot in there of a mountain gorilla. It's a black and white shot. It might be further down, but so I take people trekking with the mountain gorillas. Like there's only there's less than 1,000 left in the wild. There it is. Yeah. So that's that shot I was telling you about where I had the 12 to 100 Olympus lens, and this gorilla basically came out of the forest behind, and I was the only one in this little clearing by myself, and I was sitting down next to my camera bag, and he just came right in front of me, and I was at 12 millimeter here, so that's the full frame. That's how close he was.
Wow.
But yeah, with the gorillas, I take people to Rwanda. We trek up in the mountains. We do 2 or 3 days. We photograph, various different families, and we do, a whole week there. So we do golden monkeys. We get the gorilla doctors to come out, and they do a whole lecture about, how they look after the gorilla families and, keeping the species alive, that sort of stuff. So it's a great experience, and Rwanda is such a beautiful country, and it's like one of the most I guess the safest countries in Africa. Like they've been named the safest country in Africa, but very beautiful, very lush green, and an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Roy Bixby says 12 millimeters sounds dangerous. It is dangerous, but remember that'd be on OM system, so it's equivalent of 24, I think. Is that right?
Still dangerous, Justin. No, still dangerous.
I know, but I'm just if that was 12 mil on a full frame, he would basically be licking that gorilla like that. You would be.
He's smelling its breath. That's for sure.
Yeah, but still terrifying. Is there any fear with that? Like, is there any risk that it could decide that it doesn't want you in its space or something? I know they're not predators, but they could be defensive. Yeah,
definitely they can be defensive because when you're seeing them, you're usually seeing them around when they're feeding and things like that, or when they're interacting socially with their families. So they're wild animals, so they can change at any point in time, but you follow a set standard of rules and protocols, sort of like how you look at the gorillas and how you be submissive, and they even have a language. A language you sort of make certain sounds that sort of say, "Hey, I'm a friend. I'm not here to cause any problems. So they have language. So it's quite an amazing experience to sort of understand all that aspects of when you're having this experience, and that's how you keep yourself fairly protected from wildlife.
So I imagine that you're when you run a tour to the space, you're giving this sort of information to your participants well before you even see a gorilla. Is that right? Like you take them through a bit of a training kind of,
oh yeah,
don't make eye contact, do make eye contact, whatever it may be.
Yeah, so the guides you have with you are very well educated guides, and they sort of go through the sounds. They go like, when we walk into the forest, you want to go wah, wah, and that means, hey, we're coming into the forest, but we're not a threat. And then there's the gorillas make, if they want you out of the way, they'll go like, so there's very specific sounds and noises they make. So they brief you on all this, and they encourage you to speak the gorilla language as you're sort of moving through the. So it is like I said, it's beyond just an interaction with wild animals. These are intelligent creatures that are interacting at your level.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal.
So it sounds like you've got just every possible amazing experience for photographers available in some way. Where, like, how do we, and they're in different spots, different websites from what I can see, some of them, like, where's the best place if someone wants to go and experience with you? How do they get started trying to figure out what experience would be for them?
Yeah, look, I guess my scottportelli.com website is all about my photography related tours, the workshops, the experiences. The other ones that are more specific, like swimming with gentle giants, is about swimming with whales. So whales in Tonga, whales in Norway, whales in Australia. So it's a different sort of experience, and not always, like, sometimes it's for photographers, but it's more for people who want that experience. Whereas on my website alone, I focus on locations, photography, places, experiences. Like sometimes, I'll do a recce. Like, I spent a couple of months up in Baffin Island in the Arctic, doing a recce on a snowmobile in minus 30 degrees, to see if that was going to be a viable place to take people to photograph bears and
minus 30.
Yeah
Doesn't sound very viable to me.
Yeah, it was definitely cold.
I thought it was chilly here in South Yarra this morning. Wow, that's nothing.
So a lot of the time I'm doing, I spend a bit of time doing recce's to places like the Arctic, Greenland, Iceland. I'm trying to find sort of unique locations for photography or experiences, and to get people, to come and see these places and photograph them. And it's tricky too, because I'm trying to, find places that haven't been photographed a lot, so then people, will have a unique experience. So it's a constant moving feast in terms of what the tours I offer are and the places I go to.
The host of the show, Grant Fleming, is in the chat, and silent partner. He's going to follow you now. He doesn't host as much anymore. He was one of the original hosts of the show. And he said, I was going to put my drone up for sale, but maybe not now after seeing your work. How did drones come into your work? I know you've done drone cinematography a lot for clients. Is that how it came into your personal work, or did it go the other direction?
It's funny because I think when the introduction of drones, like, in their initial stage, it was to capture, photos and videos and stuff like that. But now the systems are more professional and reliable, and the quality of the lenses stuff, it's changed dramatically. But I think the main thing was, for all us photographers who used helicopters and planes, they're extremely expensive. And drones open up the world for doing photography and seeing a different perspective. And I think that's the thing. Like, most people, either for or against drones, doesn't matter either way, but it's giving more opportunities to, see landscapes that people have never seen before, or have a different perspective on things that you normally couldn't have gotten. So
yeah, it's definitely a big part of my work now. Like integrate. You know, if I'm shooting for, you know, production company, they want underwater footage, they want aerial footage, they want land-based footage. You know, if I'm shooting, you know, for tourism, they want the same sort of thing. You know, and it's just more cost effective. And you know, there's the right way to do it. Like I talked to you before, like about permits. I have ridiculous amount of government permits that I apply for each year just so I can shoot in certain places around the world, around Australia. So, you know, having the right permissions in place and having, you know, all this sort of stuff, you know, it's part of a professional business. So when people come to me to, you know, do these things, they know that I've legitimately got a permit for something, or I've legitimately got a license, or a, you know, and that's the thing. I think there's a beautiful amount of photography that's out in the world, you know, that people go, oh, that's amazing, this is that. But, you know, for me, if I don't do it properly with permits, then, like, you know, down the track it could bite me professionally. So I always do it, you know,
properly,
legitimately.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and I think it's also important, given that you're going to such, you know, kind of, you know, areas where conservation is really important. The last thing you want is some cowboy throwing up a drone that's going to take down a rare bird species, or, you know, you need to be sensible about it at the same time, don't you?
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm not there to police those people. Like, you know,
No,
if they want to do something stupid, like, you know, a croc eats their drone, then, you know,
that'd be an interesting FPV perspective, wouldn't it?
Go on.
You know, I don't think I could afford to lose drones like that.
No, not a worthy experiment. Maybe a GoPro, but that's about it.
It's probably far less invasive as well, like flying a drone versus, say, you know, jumping in a chopper or.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing. People sort of don't realize that, like, the decibels on a drone is so much lower than a helicopter, a plane, a boat motor, you know, things like that. And you just go, and always people think that, oh, it's, you know, it's this and that, it's going to be a negative thing. And I thought, well, it doesn't have to be. Like, it can just be a simple. Like, to me, it's just another tool of the trade. Like, it's like any other tool I've got. You know, I've got a camera, I've got underwater housing, I've got lighting, I've got, you know, it's another tool that I need, you know, to, you know, create what I create.
Speaking of creating what you create, have you got any cool projects or trips that planned that you're excited about coming up?
Good question. Yeah, well, sort of. Like, I have my regular projects, so like my Falkland Islands trip every year, which is, you know, wildlife related. But this year I'm heading down to Antarctica, but I'm heading down to the Ross Sea part of Antarctica, which is off the Australia and New Zealand side. So I haven't done that for a number of years, but it's a lot further away than the South American side. So going out of New Zealand down to Antarctica, I'm going to be there for a month and a half on a ship, but still, I'm pretty excited about that because it's a region I haven't been to, you know, properly for a long time. But yeah, personal projects. I'm always looking for new personal projects. I'm always working on some personal projects. But this year the focus was to stay home in Australia because it's, you know, most of the time it's 10 months of the year overseas. So this year I've managed to be in Australia for, you know, the whole year. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. But still moving around all over the place though and exploring.
There's still plenty to see, isn't there? It's not like you're
No.
Nick Fletcher says, such a cool dude. I agree. Very cool dude. It's been so good to have you on, especially just days after being announced as the 2025 Australian Photographer of the Year. That was crazy timing. Very lucky for us.
Oh, thank you.
We didn't pay the judges off at all to try and boost up this podcast.
Yeah, nice.
I didn't actually realize, was that really Julie from Nikon that announced it? Was that?
Yeah.
I didn't even. I watched it and I don't know why I didn't recognize her. I mustn't have been paying attention. I was mainly waiting for you to come on.
She was a bit pixelated too. It was also one of those moments where Starlink dropped out for about 10 seconds.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. I should just mention that to anyone that's listening. If you're interested, the Australian Photographic Prize YouTube channel has the live streams of not only the award ceremony, which is what we're talking about now, where they brought Scott on, but the actual judging. You can watch a 2 hour and 45 minute judging live stream and see what it's all about and how it goes. Yeah. And then that's for the wildlife section. They've got it for all of the sections. So you can just spend hours watching the judging. And I think that's probably a great thing to do if you plan on ever entering some awards. I think that would be a good way to get a bit of an idea of how it works and what goes on.
Yeah. And just some of the language and some of the areas that people focus on when they do judge images. It can just help form a bit of a background for you when you take your own shots. Now, Scott, I'm very conscious of time because you've been with us for just shy of 2 hours now. And, granted, you don't need to save power for a coffee machine, but we do need you to have some power left by the end of the day. But other than the Australian side of the Antarctic trip you got coming up, any other projects, exhibitions, any other exciting plans for the rest of this year that we can look forward to?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I've got, like I said, I've usually got my regular sort of trips running each. I don't know if there's anything specific because, like I said, I try to take the year off just to do Australia. But so if I list them out, I've got Antarctica. I've got Falklands in December. I've got Antarctica in December, January, into February. I've got, I'm doing a Lake Air aerial thing next year with another photographer, Ari Rex. That'll be in April, May. I'm doing gorillas in April. I'm doing minke whales in June. So it's a constant flow of various projects. Personal project. I've got one personal project I'm working on at the moment. I've been working on for the last 4 years. However, I can't really tell you.
No, that's okay. Maybe we'll get you back on when you're ready to reveal that one.
It's one of those passion projects I've been working on for about 3 or 4 years, and I think I've got another year on it, and then I'll be happy with whatever I develop from that body of work.
Well, if you're looking for somebody to showcase it, we're here for it. We're here for you. If you want to come back on when that happens, we'd love to talk about it and share that with the world. So stay tuned for that one, folks. Justin or Jim, did you have any other questions that you wanted to cover off before we wrap?
No, just keep an eye on the booking form for your 2027 Antarctica yacht trip. I'll start selling stuff.
Definitely going to need the 100 to 500 for that, Justin.
Oh, well, that'd be the whole other issue. It's like, what gear would I have to buy to make the most of that trip?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be crazy. Because so on a trip like that, everyone that's booking on that kind of trip, they've got their own housings, they've got the full setups, their own wetsuits. It's not like a hosted trip where things are provided for you. It's you're bringing all of your own equipment ready to go in the water and shoot.
Pretty much, and like I said, not everyone's like a full underwater photographer, so they tend to either hire a dry suit or buy a cheap one, and then get an underwater housing, and usually they use it that one time. But it's funny, the last trip I had underwater photographers and people who were not underwater photographers, but everyone stayed in the water like for the whole month. Like there was no one that didn't want to get in the water. So I think it's one of those things. Once you hit the water, you go, I'm in Antarctica. I'm looking at an iceberg in front of me. I'm looking at seals and penguins zipping past me underwater. Oh, here comes a big whale right in front of me. Like when all that action is happening, even if you're not an underwater photographer, you will be excited about it.
Hard to ignore, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very hard to ignore. Now, Justin does have one last question for you. Do you want to ask him the zombie question, Jay?
I had forgotten about it. I got distracted by Rodney Nicholson's comment saying he looks like a green tea man as opposed to coffee. I was like, I better check. Green tea. If it was the end of the world, zombie apocalypse, and you were down in Antarctica and there were zombies floating around in the frigid cold waters down there. If you had to pick one camera and one lens to document the end of the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, well, I'd say it'd have to be my OM1 Mark II. I'd say my trusty 12 to 100 lens, because then I could capture that wide apocalypse, plus I could also have, a close-up shot of a zombie's mouth, coming over the top of the camera. Yeah, and because I've had that experience with wildlife doing the same thing, I know how to,
I think you could do it well. I think you could really build a good body of work around an apocalypse.
And no doubt you would learn their language too. You could grunt right back at them within your experiences. So I think you'd be safe. I think you'd be fine. But look, on that note, folks, I think we are going to wrap today's episode of the Camera Life podcast. But before anything else, one final congratulations to you, Scott, on winning the Australian Photographic Prize 2025 as the Australian Photographer of the Year. We, us fellow Aussies and fellow photographers, are incredibly proud of you, and I think it's a phenomenal achievement. But looking at your body of work and the lengths that you go to capture an image, definitely well deserved. So, on behalf of us, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute delight and treasure to have you on. We are very fortunate to have you on only days after finding out that you are the Australian Photographer of the Year. But for anyone who's keen to look into more of Scott's work, we're going to link in the comments his website and his Instagram. You can go check it out for yourself. Have a look at the tours that are on offer, and think about the once in a lifetime opportunity that one of those tours may present to you. It's definitely something to work towards, I would say. But yeah, look, I think on that note, we're going to roll the music, and we're going to say our farewells to the chat. But yeah, Scott, thank you once again. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of
enjoy the trip. Have fun.
Yeah.
Send make sure you I don't know, throw a few cool stories on Instagram so we can follow the journey in the great outdoors.
Indeed.
All right, let's see what's going on with you crazy guys in the chat while we go, because good to see you, Lisa and Neil. 34 Media says, congrats, Scott. Great job. Nice to meet you. Roy Bixby says, zombies in Australia are known as art directors. Robert Varner, always good to see you. Shots by Jeremy, like the sound effects. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, Jeremy.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks for viewing. Catches, good show. Good job, Scott. And I don't know. That's it. Oh, Philip Johnson, as always, the best. Yep. Roddy Nicholson, legend. Yep. Nick Fletcher, legend. You're all great. All right.
Pete Mellows, Neil.
Pete Mellows. Samantha Olsen.
Hey, Sam.